Hi, my name's Ben Lackey. I'm with Oracle's Cloud Infrastructure Group, and I'm excited to be here today to talk with you about one of our partners, Couchbase, and how we're working together. Right, so let's get started. So first off, before we start, recording of this is going to be made available, and you'll be able to access that after the webcast. Also, feel free to ask questions as we go through. Really happy to make this interactive. One thing I want to call out is we may make some forward-looking statements, so just be aware of that. Right, so you've got two presenters on the call, me, Ben Lackey. As I mentioned, I'm with Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. Was previously with Couchbase and DataStax, so really passionate about the NoSQL space. I work with a number of partners, including Couchbase, and as we step through this, Jeff will start out first talking about Couchbase and our partnership here, and then after that, I'll take over and I'll do a bit of a demo showing Couchbase running on OCI, and then we'll end with some next steps. So with that, Jeff, take it away.
Thanks so much, Ben. Welcome, everybody, and thank you to Oracle Cloud Infrastructure for inviting us in today. We're really excited to talk about Couchbase, as Ben had said, but it's a NoSQL database, and my background, as you can see, is also in the NoSQL space as well as the analytics space. And I've also worked for about, 4 different open source vendors throughout the course of my career. I'm based in the San Francisco Bay Area, and my contact information is attached right here. So feel free to reach out at any time if you're interested in finding out more information about what we're going to talk about. So looking ahead, Couchbase, we're very excited about and have been excited about being partners with Oracle for quite some time. In 2018 was when we originally validated our server on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, and we were one of the inaugural participants in the launch of the Oracle Marketplace, and continue to enjoy working with Oracle all the time in Oracle Cloud. It's a really solid partnership that we're carrying forward here. We're a NoSQL database. What makes us unique or interesting in this space is that we're a JSON document-oriented database with key value store capabilities. I'll get into some of that in a little bit more, but we're a platform that helps our customers accelerate application innovation, and we're carrying forward many of the best ideas of NoSQL, whether that's memory forward design, or using the familiarity of SQL as a query language, but deploying it in an elegant platform that spans, not only operating within Oracle Cloud, but all the way to the edge. We have a great mobile solution that we'll talk about in a moment. We are a private company. We just announced recently an investment of $105 million. So we're a very stable, very healthy organization, and we've got locations worldwide. And much of what we'll end up discussing about Couchbase is indeed the ability for our applications to span worldwide kinds of deployments. So first off, before we get into our presentation, I really want to thank all of you for being Couchbase users. As you'll see here, the number of different applications that are being deployed on using Couchbase, it spans banking, it spans retail, media and publishing, and of course, travel and leisure when we're able to get back to all of that. But no doubt there is probably at least 10 different instances of Couchbase running on your mobile device right now as we speak. So let's talk about why NoSQL is an important technology to investigate, and what's happening in the market, and even more so right now in the spring of 2020. So let's look at what customer behavior is like. We're seeing that customers themselves are spending, of course, more time interacting with applications over the web than they are transacting with applications as they might have done or as we might have done in the past. This notion of we're needing to have or supply thousands of interactions per transaction is a characteristic that is fundamentally different about modern applications. So let's look at that for a second. And really, we're seeing that the NoSQL space is tending to blend together the transactional as well as the analytical types of applications that you see traditionally. So where relational databases support that one-to-one, an invoicing system, an ERP system, those kind of capabilities, what we're seeing today is the notion of these interactions that applications are generating, whether it's a shopping cart with sessions or credit card before a credit card transaction gets made. Or if you look at the IoT space, it could be millions of interactions, a device location, a device state, a device, events that are happening within it prior to a monetary transaction taking place. So typically the NoSQL space, its initial adoption is happening in that upper level, the interaction space and in how to engage a customer. But I think if you even click through this, you'll see that the ability for NoSQL systems to support both the interactions as well as the transactions is what we're seeing today. Now, we characterize this as the need to support systems of engagement, and it spans a multitude of different industries. We're seeing this happen pretty much anywhere where there's an online interaction going on with customers. So when you consider this, you look at where the interactions are taking place. They're on the web, certainly, but they're also on mobile, as I mentioned before, and they're also on device that are emerging right now. And the types of systems of engagement or interaction that we're seeing, the use cases, they span a number of different categories here as well. So Customer 360 is oftentimes born from user profile information that an application is storing and keeping track of. But to get that Customer 360 view over time, you have to remember what the user interactions were the previous time that they came and visited your site or your mobile device. And oftentimes this requires and where Couchbase fits very, very well is front-ending existing systems that are stressed under load. So oftentimes our first entry point into a customer's organization is under this caching and offloading an existing system so that they can handle a higher degree of transactions or a higher degree of interactions and users with their system. Then you'll see catalog and inventory systems delivering products or pricing information to your users as that sort of source of truth. We'll see field service applications being built, and one of the peculiar things about that I'll speak about in a minute is the situation where your internet connectivity might be spotty or available on and off in field service kinds of work, and the same might hold true for Internet of Things kinds of applications. But supporting all three of these kinds of engagement, whether it's caching and offloading, source of truth, or becoming the system of record, we're seeing customers deploy Couchbase in that manner all the way across the board. So let's talk a little bit about what's NoSQL and where does it get its value, and then that will start to illustrate why Couchbase is of value, especially when we're operating inside of Oracle Cloud. So first is really the power and flexibility of using a JSON document to drive your schema. And the value here is that the schema itself is very dynamic and changeable as you need. And the cleverness of Couchbase is this schema itself, or this JSON document, is storing key value pairs as its value. So it's a very simple design, but it's also a very flexible design. So you can store your data across a multitude of ways, whether it's denormalizing a single document and holding everything about a customer or a user in that document. You could also normalize the document and make references to additional documents. You could actually add new key value pairs when you need, right? So in the days of managing very, very structured schema, rolling out schema changes was very cumbersome and required a very deliberate activity of a new version of the entire application with its database, with its schema, et cetera. That might take months to roll out. In this case now, we allow you to end up making changes on the fly to the application, and the database will follow suit because of this JavaScript's or JSON's flexibility. So, and you can access a JSON document through a multitude of different avenues or vehicles, whether it's directly accessing key value pairs, using SQL or SQL familiar querying, using full text search syntax, or even using MPP processing, very, very large query support using things like an analytics service. So however you need to get the data or process the data or update and change the data, the power and flexibility of JSON being the flexible format that we're storing everything in is one of the biggest values of NoSQL here. So the next question is really, why would you pick JSON itself for that data format? And one, it's a standard, right? So it's something that is going to evolve in a deliberate way, supporting RFCs, and therefore that becomes portable across not only Couchbase formats, but portable across other systems. So if you need to externalize any of these documents, you can do so with the confidence that there's something else that's going to be able to read and write it and operate it correctly. So the JSON object itself makes a great document kind of format for us to be using. So in the real world of NoSQL, let's look at what really happens and give you a customer example of what we're going to see here. So let's talk about Tesco. And Tesco is a retailer in the UK. And they've developed a Customer 360 and catalog and inventory application that spans tens of millions of items and supports somewhere in the area of 35,000 requests per second per day. Their issue or their driving point that forced them to look at Couchbase was in 2014 on Black Friday, their site went down. And this is actually not that uncommon a story. I've had other customers in my past that have suffered the same kind of fate with an immense amount of traffic happening on Black Friday after Thanksgiving or Cyber Monday. And so that immediate influx of traffic was what drove Tesco to look at and then evaluate alternatives to support this very, very dynamic and sometimes unpredictable set of traffic coming in. Now, the end result of this is the following year, Tesco ends up having a banner year, best Black Friday ever, because they were able to indeed serve all of the customers that they needed. So let's look at their core architecture and the design of Couchbase in their environment. And you'll see, at the back end is their master data management system. That's running Oracle. And we're front-ending that application with Couchbase SDKs that are feeding the database cluster itself, which is providing that memory-forward cached kind of cached exercise to Tesco's application tier. So Couchbase is handling the volume of activity that's coming into the environment, but is indeed back-ended by their Oracle-based backend systems. And what they built now is a product catalog, their pricing and promotions catalog, so that even in-store or on mobile, their customers are able to see what's on sale and what's not. They're doing high volume reads for stocking and inventory management. They're doing shopping cart activities within Couchbase, and user profile management all the way through, so they know what the preferences are of particular customers as they're setting up shopping carts. So suggestions are personalized for those customers. So let's look at why Couchbase is really appropriate for these kinds of situations. And Couchbase is really, we cut our teeth behind many, many, many business critical applications. As I mentioned, Tesco carrying tens of millions of unique SKUs, or handling 35,000 requests per second when they're under load. LinkedIn is using us as a front end for their user session caching for a particular single view of their user base. They're dealing in 2 million reads per second and 10 million queries per second kind of thing. So, of course, we're all on LinkedIn right now as the daily course of business, and that's what Couchbase is front ending all of that. But we have other customers who in media, right? I know that we're consuming lots of media right now, as is Comcast delivering hundreds of millions of documents that are templates for the different pieces of content that they're delivering to hundreds of thousands of users all at once. And then when travel does, of course, come back, the back end, your travel bookings are oftentimes handled by Amadeus. 8 million operations per second was what this original slide had said, but they've actually upped that to nearly double. At 15 million operations per second is what they're able to handle with Couchbase. And when we start talking about the mobile activities, the pilot and crew management systems are being run at United using Couchbase Mobile. So, and from an industry standpoint, coverage that we're seeing is we're regularly recognized in retail and e-commerce, in financial services. We've got actually about 2/3 of the credit card transactions getting processed in the world go through Couchbase. We've got in media and entertainment, most of those organizations are using us in gaming, as well as the industrial IoT platforms. The top 2 favorites are all using Couchbase as well. So let's look a little bit about, I mentioned before why JSON was so special about as a format, but what has Couchbase done in support of JSON that make it even better? So one is we include a key value store that operates in memory and is doing in-memory reads and writes prior to delivering across our clusters, prior to making things persistent, even though we're an ACID transaction supported database. So we'll support distributed ACID transactions as well, giving you the guarantee that we can be system of record types of deployments. What really makes Couchbase stand out, though, is our query language. We call it NQL. It's spelled N1QL, but NQL supports the familiar syntax of SQL that we all expect and are comfortable with. So it does things like select statements and has where clauses and has updates and deletes and of course supports joins across documents that users are oftentimes very, very comfortable with. And in many cases, other NoSQL databases don't support those kind of capabilities as well. So you might see the benefit here is that Couchbase using a declarative language like both SQL or NQL allows the querier or the application programmer to just say, database, go do the work and get me the information I need, rather than having an imperative language where you have to program every single step in that access mechanism in order to get the results that you're anticipating. Now, some other interesting things that make Couchbase special is our indexing services are actually built up independently of our data coordination or data control services and our query services. So if you need heavier indexing resourcing, you can do that, and I'll talk about that in a second. But we also include full text search capability, this memory first shared nothing architecture that can be deployed across hundreds of nodes in a cluster if you need. And operates all asynchronously and globally, so wherever reads or writes need to happen in this masterless architecture, they do, and then Couchbase reconciles the consistency of all of that as needed automatically. So let's look at some of the clever things that Couchbase does here. Very, very modern architecture. I want to talk about this one of my favorite features is this multi-dimensional scaling. Because again, this is something unusual that you'll see about Couchbase that you won't necessarily see with other products. We allow you to performance match, and this works really well in Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. We allow you to performance match each one of our individual services to the nodes that you've deployed in Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. So if you have heavy data service activity, as we're displaying here, you can allocate the data service to span across 5 different nodes at once. And then you can allocate the query service to 2 specific nodes and the indexing service to its own nodes. So we can as I mentioned, we can custom configure Couchbase to optimize the resourcing that it's living above in Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. So if you need, again, if you need more CPU for queries, great, set it up that way. If you need more memory for indexing, great, set it up that way. It's one of the really, really clever things on a per service basis that makes Couchbase so competitive. And then as Ben will talk about, when you match this up with Oracle Cloud Infrastructure and its advantages, this really delivers a very, very low TCO for our customers. So in terms of scaling and high availability, we scale on demand. We support replication across our clusters, and when we're doing replication, we're delivering the replicas to other nodes in the cluster in a well-organized manner. And maybe my second favorite feature of Couchbase here is the fact that we can automatically partition ourselves and rebalance the data in those partitions automatically. And what the differentiation here is that Couchbase's partitioning scheme, whether you need a shard key or how you want to determine the rules for sharding, we handle that automatically. You can set up your own rules for perhaps geo-distribution to support GDPR requirements, but beyond that, that's a filter that you apply on the sharding infrastructure. But you don't ever have to architect or design your shard key itself, and we see that happening in a lot of different NoSQL systems right now. Is that design of how you're going to break apart your database, you have to figure out. In Couchbase, that's done automatically for you. And the manifestation of that that's really cool is when you need to add nodes to your cluster, you just say add a node, and Couchbase deploys itself to the cluster and then rebalances all the data across all the nodes in the cluster. That's one clever piece of this. But then when you decide it's okay to contract all of that information and decommission a node, you can rebalance backwards as well. So so Couchbase will give you that elasticity that organizations are really looking for very, very easily. So this is constructed with always on, always available to applications with memory-to-memory replication that's happening before we do writes to disk. So overall, it helps simplify deployment with this topologically aware set of clients to direct communication to the right places, but all behind the scenes, everything is managed very, very easily using Couchbase. And then when you do go global, we support cross-data center replication. And all of this, of course, is by design, supports localized regulations that we find in different areas. And even so you can replicate from zone or region to region within Oracle Cloud very, very easily using the cross-data center replication capability. Now, next I want to talk about some of the additional services that we offer. The first one is our analytics service, and we support the emerging trend you're seeing in NoSQL databases is really mimicking what we've seen for decades in relational systems and data warehousing, et cetera, is this hybrid transactional and application processing kinds of designs. So Couchbase supports this as well. On the operations side, our query service handles millions, you saw before, millions of transactions per second. The beauty about those transactions is they're typically small. Now, conversely, analytic operations are different. Analytic operations may be, in our analytic services, is optimized to do very, very large scale reads across in the entire data set, and then bring back and aggregate all of those result sets very, very efficiently and quickly. So when you're doing fewer queries, but the breadth and time it takes to both fetch and retrieve all of that information is because of the volume that you're accessing. The analytics service is much more appropriate for that kind of functionality. And when you need to stream information in and out or behave, supporting database triggers or stored procedures, Couchbase supports our eventing function. And here, what this is allows us to do things like access other external data sources, stream through Kafka, access web applications, and all of this, or pass events back and forth to web apps. And all of this is done using simple JavaScript calls. So the eventing function should be very, very familiar with for your web designer to get things in and out of Couchbase as easily as possible. And then again, let's talk. And now we'll look at almost no application is dedicated to operating in a web browser or a desktop browser. We need to be mobile as well. So Couchbase has an entire product line called Cachebase Mobile that supports deployment on iOS, Android, .NET applications, Java applications, directly to mobile, to tablets, or to IoT devices, and delivers on those devices the JSON document structure that we had mentioned before. And even those services that I mentioned before, like full text search, will operate within the mobile application, mobile environment as well. And we sync our Couchbase Mobile allows us to sync not only with the Couchbase server that you've deployed in Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, you sync using our sync gateway there, but Couchbase Lite also allows you to sync peer-to-peer among mobile clients. So when we talk about that intermittent internet activity or internet availability that we see in airplanes or within field service applications, the ability to synchronize peer-to-peer, and then whereas only one of those clients needs to get back to a solid internet connection and sync back to the server, this allows the field activities to happen anywhere on the planet, or maybe interplanetary eventually. So this bidirectional syncing to the cloud supports conflict resolution, supports full as incremental updates to the mobile client. Really, really clever deployment and use of Couchbase Mobile. And finally, security-wise, of course, everyone needs to make sure that their applications, however and wherever they deploy them, are secured, supporting modern capabilities. So on Couchbase Mobile or anywhere the Couchbase Lite database lives is AES 256 encryption. So encrypted at rest there, secured over the wire with TLS, secured through the sync gateway, and then also supporting role-based access and permissioning through your web services tier. Again, TLS amongst not only your application tier, but back to the Couchbase cluster, and the Couchbase cluster itself amongst our members are also all encrypted transmission back and forth, and we can also support encryption on disk for the JSON documents themselves. And even if you need to geofence everything and filter things with cross data center replication, we support that too for supporting GDPR or CCPA in California. Everything where PII data is treated as specially as it should be. We support those regulatory requirements as well. So I've described Couchbase itself and all the core capabilities there. So with our product, you receive a very high performance, industry-leading performance database that supports a wide variety of applications in cloud, in mobile, to the edge, But then I think what becomes really special about this is when we're running on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, we get to capitalize on some of their core capabilities. So I want to hand it back over to Ben to discuss that.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, so as Jeff mentioned, our whole discussion today is about running Couchbase on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, OCI, which is Oracle's Infrastructure as a Service, or IaaS play. And this picture gives us some idea of the different things that offers. And it's everything from a compute layer, a network layer, a storage layer, to higher level services, different kinds of database services, analytics services, and even really neat new things like machine learning and chatbots and so forth. The other thing I'd call out is Oracle has a much wider portfolio than just OCI. We, of course, have all these different SaaS applications, things like our ERP offerings, our human capital offerings, customer relationship management, and so forth. And there's this really interesting opportunity to leverage partner solutions like Couchbase running on OCI to create greater value around those packaged applications. And Jeff actually gave us one example a little earlier in the presentation where Tesco is using Oracle's MDM solution and then leveraging Couchbase to get greater value out of it that way. Right. So specifically, we're here to talk about Marketplace. Marketplace launched about a year ago, and since then has grown rapidly to include a whole bunch of partners, including Couchbase. We're recruiting across different segments, so like building out our AI vertical, HPC vertical, and so on as well. So Couchbase, listed in Oracle Marketplace since the launch at Open World this last year. And fundamentally what this is it's a click to deploy way to get a Couchbase cluster all up and running. So the experience that we're going to walk through in the demo in a minute is you go into OCI Marketplace, kind of click next, 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 pick however many nodes and what size you want and so on. And then you get a cluster fully deployed and functioning and ready to use to do whatever you'd like. This deployment deploys both server and sync gateway. So server is the core NoSQL database. And then sync gateway is, well, that gateway for the mobile communication Jeff was just telling us all about. And there are two options to deploy this. One is a bring your own license. So relevant kind of in two ways. One, if you have sort of a limited use case with Couchbase where you're just poking at it, doing development work, Couchbase lets you evaluate freely that way. The other case is, of course, if you have an existing license on-prem and want to bring it to OCI, that's a really good way to do that. At the same time, we have this hourly offering of Couchbase available on OCI. And that allows you as an Oracle customer to use your universal credits, your existing monetary commitment with Oracle, to actually purchase third-party products like Couchbase. So in that model, you're using your universal credits to purchase both the Couchbase license as well as the infrastructure as a service underlying it to run it, all bundled together in one thing. So this whole deployment, it's not just a VM image. It's a bit more complex than that. It's leveraging what's called Terraform underneath. And Terraform's an open source infrastructure as code standard. Can be viewed as competitive with other proprietary infrastructure as code standards. And one of the neat things about Oracle Cloud is we've been able to adopt these open standards rather than building proprietary standards. Just all part of our commitment to openness. So that marketplace listing with the Terraform that automates the deployment of Couchbase, that very same Terraform that underlies it is available publicly out on GitHub under an Apache license, free for you to use and fork, modify, and just make it meet your needs. Right. So a specific example, a while back we were working with a customer on their deployment on OCI, and this is a picture of it. It actually leverages that multi-dimensional scaling Jeff was telling us about a bit earlier. So it was 4 nodes of the data service and 3 nodes of the index and query service, plus a little 2-node application to drive it. And the machines were quite substantial, bare metal standard E264s, as it says. Those are well, bare metal machines. They're very big, and each one has 64 cores, half a terabyte of RAM, and so on. And one thing I'll call out here, OCI is actually a really good place to run Couchbase because we have these beefy machines, and Couchbase, because it doesn't use technologies like, say, Java that have a garbage collector, it can actually scale up to handle these great big machines quite well, a lot better than some other technologies. So, right, high performance cluster running on OCI, great. Well, how much does that cost? One of the great things about OCI is we're pricing it very, very attractively. And this is an analysis of that cluster we were just looking at, comparing it to some similar machines on AWS. And I won't go through the nitty-gritty detail here. Trust us, it's fair. But the high-level thing here, when you roll up all this stuff, the infrastructure is way less expensive. And you see the all-in compute cost is a lot less expensive. The storage is slightly closer, but it's not a major driver. And then one thing that's been relevant a lot recently is the network costs too. OCI has very inexpensive network connectivity. Right. So at this point, it's time to actually take a look at this and see how it works. So looking at Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, we have a free trial available. And this is a really great way to get started really easily. I browsed over to it. Honestly, the easiest way to find it's just to search for OCI free trial or something like that. If you scroll down here, we've got an always free tier, and these are some smaller machines. It's kind of interesting, though. Honestly, if you're running something like Couchbase, you're probably going to want bigger, faster machines to really get the best experience. To that end, with the free trial, you get 30 days, $300 to go fiddle around and do what you might want to do. So if you have a free trial, or in my case, I unsurprisingly have an OCI account, you can go to cloudmarketplace.oracle.com and you can deploy all these wonderful partner solutions. But I'm going to search for this one. I may have searched for some Couchbase things in the past. I guess I cleared that by accident. Let's try that again. All right, so Couchbase. 2 listings, as I mentioned. We got BYOL and we've got hourly. I'm going to click on our BYOL guy. And you can see here, Couchbase server and sync gateway, BYOL, bring your own license. It's apparently an other in big data sort of product, fine. And there's a description of what it does, basically everything Jeff was telling us, and some usage, support, instruction kind of stuff. Now, if we want to actually deploy this, we click this Get App button. And that redirects us over here. And the first thing it asks is what region we want to deploy in. And here are a bunch of different regions. I'm going to be super boring, and I'm just going to pick Ashburn for reasons. And now it's asking me to sign in real quick. Okay, so it sends me over to the console. I have a tenancy and account. Mine's called Partners because I do partner stuff. If I click continue, it's gonna kick me in there. There are my creds, fine. And if you redirect, here we go. And now, so this is the OCI, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure console. So we have a view of that listing again, but this is our sort of logged in, more technical view where we can actually deploy it. And I have an option to deploy Couchbase Server 651, which I believe is the current version, along with Sync Gateway 273. I can also choose where I want to deploy it. So I have what's called a compartment, and you can see a number of my colleagues have compartments as well. And that's basically it. I'll hit Launch Stack. It's going to redirect me into this view where I get to pick things about the stack. So the underlying Terraform requires us to use version 12. That's the newer version of Terraform, replacing 11 and adding some neat features recently. And I can hit next. Then there are different options for what we want to do. So I can choose different machine types, like I can choose great big ones or smaller ones like this virtual machine generation 2 with 4 cores. I can choose what version of the product I want to deploy. So, I'm going with 651 because we always got to do the latest, greatest. I get to say how big I want the cluster. By default, it's going to do 6 nodes, each with half a terabyte on them. Each node, by default, having 1 block volume. But, you can fiddle around with this to get all sorts of different configs. Similarly, I can pick a machine for the Sync Gateway. And the Sync Gateway is a little less hungry than Server. So we have it by default deploying a 2-core machine. Version 7.3. Oh, by default, we don't have it deploying any, but I want 2 Sync Gateways because it's pretty cool. The last thing here we need to fill out is it wants a key. And this key is going to be the key I can use to SSH into the machine and fiddle around with it and all. And the machines here happen to be running Oracle Linux. That's surprising given where we are. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to grab my key real quick. So I got, sure not to cat my private key on a webinar. Let's do the public key. And I'm going to grab this guy. So that's my public key. And I'm going to drop this guy in here. And then user, Couchbase, password. I'm going to type in a not terribly imaginative password. So I think we're good. Now I get a summary view of everything I just entered in. And I'm going to say, yeah, make me one of these guys. Right. So now it's running a job, a Terraform job to build all this stuff up. And this is, well, it's basically running a Terraform apply. As it warms up, it's going to start spitting out logs and background info. And in our experience, this takes maybe 10 minutes to build the whole cluster and have that up and running and ready for us. So I recognize we probably don't want to hang out here and just watch it. So I took the kind of Julia Child approach to this. And if we go up a level, we should see some other stacks. Let me drop into my compartment. And you'll see I spun one of these guys up yesterday. So let's take a look at that guy. And you can see ran through and it says succeeded. So I'm going to click on him and we can see the log. Went through here, did all sorts of stuff, made some volumes, made a server, made a sync gateway, blah, blah, blah. Waited a while for the whole thing to create. And then at the very bottom, it does this helpful thing. It spits out the IP address of one of our server nodes, as well as the IP address of one of our sync gateways. So I'm going to copy this guy and paste it in. And this is our sync gateway. A sync gateway, while a really cool developer tool, perhaps isn't the most exciting thing to look at. So basically we get a JSON blob back saying, hey, I'm here, I'm alive. But let's look at the more exciting one. So this is my URL for Couchbase server. I'm going to drop this guy in, and it'll think a minute. There we go. So here's a Couchbase server login screen. Our username is specified in the Terraform. It was Couchbase. And then our password similarly specified in the Terraform. Don't really need to remember that. And yeah, so now we're logged in here. And I don't have any buckets right now. I could make some. I can see what servers I have. So in this case, I have, hey, look at it, 6 servers. And we didn't really do an MDS deploy here. Instead, we just stood up a whole bunch of services on every single node. So you can see these guys have got data, query index, search, analytics, eventing, all this good stuff. And CPU use is pretty light. So that guy had briefly popped up to 5% for some reason and then went back down. Who knows, some bookkeeping activities, he just hangs out. Right. So that's a Couchbase server up and running on OCI. As promised, it really, really is just a next, boom, you've got it kind of thing. So at this point, we're going to step back and look at next steps and things you can do. Okay. So as far as next steps, as I mentioned, we've got the free trial. Try it yourself. It's pretty easy. The marketplace listings, there are those 2 options, to bring your own license and the hourly. And then, if you're a little more of a tinkerer, the quick start at github.com/Oracle quickstart/OCI Couchbase might be interesting. And then, please reach out to us with any questions. Love to hear feedback. Jeff, do you have any closing thoughts?
Well, for one, Ben, I want to thank you both for hosting this, but even better was watching someone from Oracle demonstrate my product, right? I love seeing other people dive right in and show how easy it is to get going. And I want to reiterate what you had said earlier when you brought up the comparison slide between showing how from a cost breakdown, OCI is really, really competitive. And then when you match that up to the MDS feature that we were talking about earlier to performance match everything, this becomes a highly, highly competitive capability for both Couchbase and Oracle. So again, thank you very much for hosting us here. And as you said, if you want to get in touch with either one of us, certainly please feel free to do so. And we look forward to speaking to you down the road. Thanks very much.